the TTS Talking Early Years podcast. Each week we'll be joined by educational experts from across the globe, offering exclusive insights, inspiration and guidance to help practitioners unlock the potential for learning in the early years. To hear about future episodes and access follow-up content, including ideas for your settings and more, sign up for exclusive access using the link in the podcast description. Okay, so we've been chatting, Simon, about role play and how helpful it is for language development. And in all this play, we rely on our spaces that we share, and the places we create, and of course the resources. I do love a resource. So I guess my question is continuous play enough? So what's continuous play, first of all, Simon? Can we bring that to the front of our conversation? And then is it enough?
I think the idea of it's continuous play, continuous provision versus adult-directed play or adult involvement. I think the very definition of continuous play and continuous provision is that the children need to know what's being provided and how they could use it without an adult being there, versus the adult's role, which would be observing, enhancing, listening to what the children are doing. I think best examples of continuous play and provision are where the area itself is inviting. It doesn't necessarily have to be a big space. It can be a small space. It's almost the children either want lots of different forms of it, or some children prefer like the very obvious example of, like, say, the home corner with everything included in it. So it's almost as if when you've done your whole class teaching, the children need to have some structure into what's there. So rather than just saying, you've done your teaching, like, go off and play now, the children need to be shown, even like through a tour of the setting. This is what it is. So you physically get up, you move around together, and it's shown what's there. Sometimes I have a choosing board where on my interactive whiteboard I pick out, say, 4 or 5 particular bits. Usually role play would be on there. Sometimes it's simple as home corner, and I leave it as open-ended as that. Or if my particular focus is in the home corner, I'll hover around the home corner first, rather than sort of going straight in there and just seeing what's happened or what the children are doing with the resources. So
yeah, I wonder as well. Continuous provision is not a terminology that we really use up in Scotland, I must say. And for me, yes, it's absolutely about what is there for the children to engage in. And I agree completely about the enhanced and enriched provision comes from the adults mostly. Because I'm thinking of the role play again that we expose our children to. And as I've said already, I love a home corner. I would never change my home corner. But often, if we wait for the children to shape our role play and lead us into the enhanced and enriched part of the provision, then, I can remember, for instance, setting up an art gallery. I was really aware that lots of my children never went to an art gallery, had never been to an art gallery. They did not know what an art gallery was. So for me, I wanted them to have that experience, but we weren't in a position to take them to it. And so we set up a role play of changing the art corner into an art gallery. And it was, so we talked about artists and we talked about designers, and, and we used Rennie Mackintosh, and we had little wooden chairs that we used to balance on each other as part of our construction materials, but we used rose petals to create a Rennie Mackintosh rose around the chairs, and we did loads of art in the art gallery, but it was just even the terminology gallery. And we also set up a recording studio, because again, that was a situation where I had never been in one either, but just to be a bit more exciting for some of the children and to give them experiences that we know they had no experience of. Do you think that's important, should we steep them in reality?
I think it's a balance between sort of experiences, curriculum, and sort of open-endedness as well. As you were talking, it made me think of something that I saw. I believe I saw it from Alistair Bryce Clegg, where he talked about role play being deconstructed. So rather than setting a role play area up, his example I saw was boxes, cardboard boxes, loads of cardboard boxes, which we ended up trialing it in our outside area. And we had a little area where, when the weather was good, we just left loads of cardboard boxes out there, and the amount of stuff the children did with it was something else. We left markers, we left paint, we left everything out there, and the children, I remember that they either made trains, they made buses, they sort of turned them upside down to make little counters. That's brave, because you have no idea what the children are going to do, but the reward is, from that, you see incredible development in that, and it's almost underpinned by the sort of the practitioners having sort of the attitude and the belief that the children will show us what they can do with. It's almost, sometimes it's minimal things rather than having everything all there, and it's sort of developing as you go along and not being afraid to justify that to maybe other people, or people that maybe don't understand it as well as we do.
And it's funny, I know Alistair quite well, Simon, and him and I would have conversations about this, and deconstructed roleplay, absolutely, and you've described it beautifully, and the benefits and the value of it. But my home corner will never be deconstructed. It's always got to be a home corner. You know, and even, I think you said the word balance, and the breadth of experience we can expose children to, because a lot of people would question me bringing in my idea of an art gallery or a recording studio, because it's an adult thought, and bringing it in for the children, it's not from the voice of the child. But I know the benefits of an art gallery, and I know that my children have not been to an art gallery, so I am making the decision to do that. And I think it is about us as teachers, as leaders of learning, of shapers, of scaffolders of learning. And I guess if you look at Vygotsky's theory on social constructivism, collaborative play and this role play we're talking about is about the use of the more knowledgeable adult, as Vygotsky said. You know, and so in that position, I am the more knowledgeable adult. When you were talking about your deconstructed role play, Simon, there would have been more knowledgeable children. They knew what a train looked like, but some of the children might never have been on a train. And so we're actually living and breathing through our play the theories of yesteryear, which is just amazing. You know, and for me, what we're talking about here is taking children from just playing to deep, rich thinking.
I think that's absolutely right. It's almost you're setting the scene for the children in terms of what you're providing. And I think when we talk about art galleries and music studios and other forms of role play scenarios that we've thought of, when it's all there and it all links to something, and we've thought about what the skills are, what's the skill progression we're trying to embed here. So within that music studio, for example, I'm thinking there are children who you provide different sorts of instruments. I know that Alistair has like a scale of resources that you're providing, which then differentiate, which shows clear differentiation. So within that music studio, you're going to have children who will be playing maybe instruments that require really quite intricate fine motor skills. But then also you're going to have children who require great, like gross motor skills, like banging the drum, or other sorts of instruments as well. But I think as long as you know the skills, why you're doing what you're doing, I don't think there's any way. There's no argument about it.
There's no right and wrong answer. There is no right and wrong answer. It's got to be what is right for the child today. You know, and in your place in London or in my place in Glasgow or wherever our listeners are in the world, it has to be about that, and it has to be about stimulating the development of thinking and those skills that you have just beautifully talked about. I've actually got in my hand, and I know our listeners can't see them, but I've got a pile of cards. There's maybe about 52, I think, and they're higher order thinking skills. And I just think it'll be interesting. I'm going to read some of them out, and to over this conversation. Have our children been involved in planning? Well, of course they will have been involved in planning. The way they use those boxes in your open-ended, or the way they respond to the art in my art gallery. Have they theorised? Well, of course they would have stood and had a conversation about, well, we put it here or we put it there. I think it would be better if we did 2 levels or whatever. Did they organise themselves? Did they formulate ideas? Did they philosophise? Did they arrange? Did they propose? Did they participate? Did they joke? I hope. Did they understand? Did they sparkle? Did they negotiate? Hundreds of higher order thinking engaged in these role play situations that we were talking about. And that just blows my mind.
Yeah, I think sometimes within role play, it's almost you underestimate what's going on. The actual what they're doing, it links to language, but we've also talked about the sort of socialisation. We've talked about their personal skills. We've talked about physical skills, arts. We've talked about their understanding of the world. All of that is encompassed within sort of one area, as it were.
Wouldn't it be interesting, Simon, to take everything that we've been talking about in our little conversations here and sit with the curriculum, the EYFS, and kind of look at all of the outcomes and say, did we cover this? Yes, we did. Yes, we did. We might not have said it in the terminologies that's written down, but of course we have. You know, like role play, and if role play can cover all of the aspects of the curriculum, so too can all of the other kinds of play. You know, and I'm thinking about Bob Hughes' play types. Now, Bob Hughes is often kind of left for after school care as a theory. But again, I've got 4 little cards that I kind of role play. He talks about role play being different to fantasy play, social dramatic play, and dramatic play. There's 4 different types of role play that he kind of singles out for us to think about, and I think that often we're so driven by curriculum and the outcomes and led by what's written down that we forget about the huge richness of the play that we've been speaking about. So I guess, you know, leaving our conversation or all of our conversations now about role play and its benefit on language development, what top 2 things would you hope our listeners go away thinking about, Simon?
I think first and foremost, I think practitioners need to be bold and brave about what they're providing for the children, and not to be worried about maybe what other people think about what they're doing. You are the practitioner. You're working closest with the children. If we went into a setting and we saw something, we saw the role play area, we wouldn't question it. We would watch the children, we'd have the professional dialogue with the adults, and by and large, we'd probably be completely satisfied with what they're doing. I think also the other thing probably to take away is what's our role within role play. So it's almost, the adult's role within role play. What are we doing? What are we watching? What are we observing? And how are we using what we're observing to enhance the children's experiences, and how we're moving their learning on, how we're enriching their experiences. So considering what we do and why we're doing it, essentially.
Yeah, I think my 2 would be, are we developing transferable cognitive skills? So, you know, yes, the language skills and the physical skills and the role play skills that we'll be developing, but are they transferable to all of the other aspects of their play? And I think hopefully we've identified, yes, they are. And my other one is that I read a lot, and I'm sure you do by the signs of our conversation. And Guy Claxton is one of my go-to people, and his Educate Ruby book asks, are we encouraging so I'm asking our listeners, I guess, through your role play, Are you developing language? But are you developing confidence in language? Are you developing curiosity in the role play, creativity, collaboration, commitment, craftsmanship, and communication? Because they're the 7 skills that Guy Claxton and Bill Lucas have identified that our children will need to survive and thrive as they go through their education journey. And if we're not developing those C's, as he talks about it, then we're not connecting the children to the learning that we are offering.
I think adding to that is not seeing a role player area just for early years. You should be confident enough to take it above early years. I can think of, I've done role play with year 3 and they absolutely loved it. I remember what was a very dry looking topic about rocks and soils was actually made more exciting by we made like a quarry outside our classroom. We had a courtyard, so we made a quarry outside, and the children absolutely loved it. So I think it's important to, if you are Key Stage 1, Key Stage 2, even all the way up to Key Stage 5, it will have benefits however you choose to present it. Like the early years approach will work beyond early years.
And I guess the other thing as well, as an adult, taking on a role, part of our partnership in play and taking on the role, you have to think about the way you use your whole self in that role, and really commit to it and be confident in it yourself. So I guess those words that Guy Claxton, it relates to the children, they need to relate to us as adults as well. Are we confident in the role we play in the play? Are we curious to find? I mean, I can remember, one little boy said that his dad used long things that were hard, and they kept things steady. And eventually, I kind of worked out through the conversation that we had that he was talking about cable ties, so I brought in loads of cable ties, but I brought in loads of plastic cable ties, but magnetic ones and Velcro ones as well. And so we had a huge big creation station using cable ties, but that was part of me. But my role in using the cable ties had to be about my engagement as well as the child and all of the children's engagement. Wow, Simon! Oh my goodness me! What a conversation we've had this morning, and hopefully our listeners will enjoy listening to our reflection on role play and the way that it benefits hugely the language development, and hopefully will help us close and narrow those gaps. So all it remains for me to say is a huge thank you, Simon, for all of your words of wisdom. I've really enjoyed our conversation, and I'm sure our listeners will too.
Thanks very much, Alice. Pleasure.
Cheers.
Thank you.
To say a huge thank you to our guest, Simon, for joining us and providing us with such valuable insights. You've been listening to the TTS Talking Early Years podcast with me, Alice Sharp, and Simon Airey. If you've been inspired by our conversation today, don't forget you can sign up via the link in our episode notes to be the first to hear about future episodes and access exclusive content.